It's too juicy for now.
James is worried you were going to give one word answers. He's like,
Well, you think I'll say yes. Maybe.
You were on Pomegranate. Pomegranate shouted you out the other day.
Did they?
Pomegranate Holdings? Are you
follow
following that guy?
I don't know.
Dude, he keeps shit talking everybody in the industry. It's just some troll account that follows like basically everybody.
Okay.
And he posted a picture of you.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Like in a good way?
No, he didn't. What do you write? He didn't write anything.
No, it wasn't bad. Yeah, he that's what he does. He just like
He's probably look at this guy photoshopping himself like an idiot.
Yeah, it was just a cutout. He just reposted you. I don't think he even said anything negative.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to The Road Home. So we're here today with John Enriquez. My name's Stephen Carlisi, and this is my co-host, James Codomo. How's it going, John?
It's all good, man. How's it going?
Pretty good, you know. The market's a little slow right now, so everyone's trying to
Figure it
hustle
out
and grind and do what they can. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you are in charge of a team right now. How are things going?
It's good. You know, I'm at Listing Pro Realty in Smithtown. It's about 10 of us in there. There's more agents within the office, but the team itself is about 10 people. And it's good because you have part-timers, full-timers, and everybody's kind of in the same boat of how to generate new business, how to cultivate, you know, for the future, how to speak to clients now about, you know, the current market conditions and where the future is going to lead us, but almost trying to be their psychiatrist at the same time and, you know, making sure that they can vent to somebody that they need to, or, you know, hold their hand through the process and making sure they feel comfortable with the knowledge and the whole process to be successful. But it's tough. It's definitely slowing down because you could see the nerves a little bit as rates, you know, spike up. But, you know, everything's cyclical in life. So, you know, you just got to keep it calm and kind of take that stress factor out of it because nobody can control, you know, where the rates are going to go or be in the future. And just kind of, you know, be prepared to, you know, give the right information, but also making sure everybody out there can either maximize an investment or they can, you know, afford a home, you know, for the future and not just for 1 year, and making sure they're comfortable with the, you know, the payment, you know, not only for this year, but for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. How seasoned are the guys on your team? Do you have a lot of veterans? Are most of them rookies? Like,
it's mixed. There's about probably 3 of them that are veterans, and then the rest are very new in the business, and they're, you know, trying to, you know, help as much as I can with it, whether it's cultivating business, build support with leads, because in this day and age, it's basically you're just a number when you walk into any industry. You hang your license number, you're like, okay, good luck, bring me a check so I can split it and then on to the next one. So, you know, I really try to be that, you know, that support system where, you know, any time of day and night, I can help support them, whatever they need. They could troubleshoot if they don't know, you know, anything from logging into MLS to where do I get a lead, you know, networking with, you know, guys like yourself and, you know, really building your brand and getting your name out there and not being shy to, you know, put yourself out there, because I think, and especially real estate, we're in a marketing business. So the more you market yourself, the better you're going to do. And I think a lot of people are kind of not willing to break out of their shell. So the individuals that are breaking those walls down and saying, you know what, let me get in front of a camera. Let me just put out anything from a door hanger to a social media post. They're going to tend to do better if they're consistent with it. And that's kind of what I preach to everybody.
What do you look for in an agent or someone to your team?
I kind of look for just like a factor where they have like that hunger for more type of mentality, where it's not like somebody saying, you know, if I do a deal here, it'll be great I could, you know, take my family on vacation. That's great. But I really want somebody that dedicated and they're hungry to kind of hit the streets and put themselves out there and be willing to like learn from, and I can learn from them as well based on different life experiences as well. So it doesn't matter kind of what previous background they had, as long as they're, you know, willing to learn and they're, you know, a good person at the core. And it doesn't have to be an overnight success. It could be, you know, a longer journey, as long as they're willing to, you know, put the work in and really, you know, trust the process. And like I said, you know, trust the networking process as well, because it's all basically, you know, your network is your net worth in this industry. So that's basically
very true, right?
Yeah.
You know?
So that's basically what I preach them, because it doesn't matter if they're a veteran or they're a rookie. They can come out of the gate running with a bunch of family referrals and friends, or there could be a veteran who's slow. It's like I said, it's cyclical with them as well. So it's just being consistent and not getting too high or too low, and just, keeping the same mindset, whether, you closed 3 deals yesterday or none in the last 6 months, just keeping the same message to yourself and keep grinding through it.
How long have you been in this industry?
So this is my 7th year. So I'm a full-time gym teacher in Queens. And I always had a knack for the real estate industry. I took my test kind of like not knowing where to kind of go. I just wanted to get it because I was like, you know what? I see these guys on HGTV. They're killing it. They're making a ton of money.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I could literally do that. And when I got into it and I first started in the first brokerage I went to, it was kind of like hell on wheels. I sat down, people were doing their own thing. No one really sat down and said, okay, this is really how you're going to structure a sales agreement. This is how you're going to go cultivate business. You had the old veterans that were just saying cold, door knock. Some people were saying, find a lender to pay for your Zillow leads. And it was just kind of like throwing stuff at you, and it wasn't really, making a blueprint for success. So then I went to another brokerage that was closer to my, where I was living at the time. And I was fortunate enough where that broker kind of sat me down, walked me through her experience, and I kind of made my own blueprint from there. I was like, okay, I see what's working for her. I see how she treats agents on, in her brokerage. I see how she's cultivating business between mortgage professionals, attorneys, investors. And I kind of tweaked my own style with it. And it really didn't start growing because I just stayed with the same thing. I was shy, like on social media. I was like, I don't really want to make my whole being dedicated to real estate. And once I kind of broke that barrier and said, you know what, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to make sure everybody that knows me knows they think of real estate. Because most people tend to know me as like teacher. I have a baseball background. They think I'm coaching travel sports. So they think, all right, like John Enriquez, he's a baseball coach. And I want them to flip that persona and think, okay, he's the go-to guy for real estate. So that was probably like year 3 or 4. And then when the COVID year happened and I really started to explode the business, I was like, you know what? I want to, it's always a growth mindset. So I was like, I'm going to take my brokerage exam. That's like the next step I wanted to do and really help support agents and grow a team out and really build that brand where not only I can help, buyers and sellers, I can help agents as well. And, not have the greedy mindset where I'm wearing big overgrown khakis and like, the Payless, the black kickers on. I wanted to really like just help anybody that wanted to provide more for their family. And that was it. It didn't matter if, like myself, I'm a full-time teacher, but I feel like I'm full-time in real estate more than I am, invested as a teacher.
This job doesn't stop, right?
No, it's madness every day, but you got to love it too. You have to, appreciate it that when your phone rings, it's people that want your services and it's not a hinder on whatever. It's a blessing. So, the more my phone rings, the more I feel like, more of a difference I'm making as well. So that's kind of how I try to grow it. And, whether I'm recruiting new agents, it's not like a heavy recruitment either. It's kind of like, hey, if you're cool at whatever brokerage, that's fine. If you want, maybe a higher split, more support in a way where it's not feeling like you're micromanaged, come on over, test it out, no harm, no foul. And that's it. It's, slowly building it to where, you really want to expand and just grow yourself out to where you want to be. So it's almost taken as like a 10X roll. You go to 10, then you go to 100. And
funny that you mentioned, social media and how it was kind of difficult for you to get started. It was exactly the same for me. I kind of hated social media before I got into this industry. I thought it was just shallow and vapid and there was no substance to it. But it really does give us like an added level of, I want to say, value that we can provide to our clients. Everything from the educational content to stuff like this where they really get to see who we are and just see that we're normal people.
Right.
I think that's super valuable, and it's definitely not as shallow as I thought it was. Maybe you post a couple of pictures, you're on vacation, that's a little shallow, but right. For the stuff that we're doing, we're really, people in our industry, we're really out there trying to provide value to our clients at whatever way we can, and we're all innovators. We're all kind of people who didn't necessarily fit into, not necessarily you, because you had a clear path for yourself, but all of us are kind of people that don't necessarily fit into like the traditional mold for employment, and we all kind of want to be our own boss, and we all kind of want to do our own thing, but at the end of the day, we're in the service industry. We're here to help our clients. I want to help my first time home buyer client get into that house, you know, maybe even get into like a house hack and, you know, start their journey toward wealth, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, I love that you're doing that. And I think it's big in this industry. What did you do before you got into the industry? You said you were a gym teacher.
Yeah, so I'm currently still a gym teacher. I've always been involved, you know, in the baseball circuit world.
Did you go to school to become a teacher?
Yeah, so originally I went to Hartwick College in Oneonta, and after my freshman year, they dropped the baseball program. They shed a lot of sports.
Oh, man.
So then I transferred to Queens, and when I was at Hartwick, I was actually registered as a business major. I always had like that knack to be in business. I didn't know whether it was management, administration, but when you're a freshman, you're taking general classes anyway, you know, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And
Math, English, all those things.
And with the
Prereqs.
college baseball circuit, when I was upstate, you know, they make you do like hours of like community service. So they had us volunteer at the YMCA. One of the assistant coaches was like, you know what, like you have a knack with kids, like maybe you should, you know, be in that industry. You could coach. You know, I think you'd be a good fit for it. And he gave me a really good word of advice. He's like, you know, you can always do business without a business degree. And I was like, okay, that kind of stuck with me. And I looked at, you know, my other, you know, gym teachers in the past, and I saw like kind of like how, you know, their life was pretty smooth. But I always was like, I don't want to take the easy way out, but I kind of used it as like a buffer. Okay, I can enjoy this, but I always want to make my life, you know, better longer term. So how do I maximize my time? You know, teachers work 180 days. I can maximize the rest of my calendar to focus on, you know, real estate when I, you know, explored that. So that's kind of like how the transition came, where I was like, you know what, I like being busy. I like staying busy, and coaching, you know, on the outside in the youth is always like, it's fun. It's not like a crappy retail job. It's fun. It's interactive.
Fulfilling.
You're making a difference. You're helping kids get recruited to the next level, and that's great. But it's funny that all the parents and the kids, they're all over my social media posts. They're like, when are you closing another house? It's funny. So it's like they
get into it too.
That transition went crazy because they're always like hyping me up on social media, all the like past current players and parents. And
They remember you.
yeah. And I try to stick out that way because, you know, I literally oversized Photoshop myself on every closing, and I don't make myself small. It's like I make myself bigger than the house. I was playing around with it. I put myself on the chimney, in the driveway, inside of the window. Great. So like this way, they're like, where you're scrolling, what would make you kind of stop and be like, whether it's ridiculous, whatever, they're like, I can't believe this guy. You're going to recognize, you're going to be like, it's going to be consistent where they're going to see me. And that was the biggest thing I wanted to do, is just stick out and broadcast the business end of what I was doing. So
my road to get here was kind of crazy. You know, I worked in kitchens. I cleaned fish tanks.
Went to culinary school.
I went to culinary school. Yeah, exactly. For me, there was a clear change in my mentality that got me motivated to want to change my life. And that led me along a crazy path that led me to this industry. Do you have anything similar? Do you have any similar type of story?
I used to live in Long Beach. I'm from West Babylon, but I used to live in Long Beach. And sometimes I would take walks on the boardwalk and I'd see like these monster houses on the water. And I'm like, these guys are now working 9-to-5 jobs. Like, what are they doing? They're doing something else that's going to propel them in life. And I just started being like a self-educated like bookworm. I'm reading books on various type of investors from, you know, whatever, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the 10X. And I'm like just trying to conglomerate and say, okay, how can I propel myself and better position myself? And that was kind of like the goal of mine, was saying, you know what, I'm fortunate enough where I have a good career in the teaching world. I want to propel my real estate to a point where it's very lucrative, but I'm going to act like I'm not making that money, and I'm going to reinvest it into rental properties. So that's what I did. I would, you know, and because I went to school upstate, I had connections up there. So there's a property manager, there's another realtor up there that I trust, and you know, I bought 2 rental properties up there, you know, that the margins are great, the cash flow, you know, whether something leaks or whatever, someone's taken care of. So that was my goal, where it not only was to build the business, but to make the inconsistent income of commissions, make it consistent income monthly with the rental properties. And that's kind of like what keeps me going and keeps me grinding, is seeing that, you know, people kind of build wealth through what our industry does. And I wanted to not only provide that, but that's also
90%
advice.
Millionaires, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people,
you
know, I think that's a trust factor too, because if people are looking to buy a house, they say, okay, do you own a house? Or if you're talking to an investor, you own investment property. So like it's kind of, you know, you can give that firsthand experience saying, hey, look, this happened to me, whether it's, you know, from the roof to the siding to, you know, nightmare tenant stories or funny tenant stories, that's basically how I wanted to get into it, was kind of build generational wealth and pass it down. And really, that was my kind of fuel to keep me going and keep me grounded. But it wasn't really like anybody I met. Like, it was along the way, like even like Charles Weimar, like seeing how he just has like a bajillion properties and he's flipping and he's renting, and like that's an inspiration. But I've only met him like 4 or 5 times, and just seeing how people are, just dedicated to their craft and whatever goals they are, whether it's 1 unit, 10 units, 1,000. It's kind of sky's really the limit with it, depending on your threshold. So that was kind of my propeller to like trampoline me up to really try and achieve that.
I'm glad that you mentioned the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read that book, and it is literally the defining moment that changed everything for me. I read that book, and in it he talks about moving from the employee side to the boss investor side of that like
quadrant.
Yeah. Exactly. That time I had no options. I didn't have any formal education, other than I had been to culinary school, but I had already decided that I did not want to be in that industry at all. It's a grueling industry. If you want to be at the highest level in the restaurant industry, you're working 14-hour days, 6 days a week, and you eat it like all day long.
Right.
Like, at the time I was working, a regular hourly paid job. And I started door dashing in the evenings, and I filled my day with, hourly work. And I saw how unsustainable that was. And I realized that like I need to change from being paid hourly to being paid in a way that is more sustainable. From there, I started taking the real estate exam, or I started taking the real estate prerequisite course.
Right.
And it just, something didn't fit with, me becoming a real estate agent. So the next course, the next natural progression was, let's go see if we can become a loan officer.
Right.
And for some reason, just with me, numbers, being a little bit more analytical, it just fit.
Right.
And here we are.
What are you seeing right now in the market? Like the post from like a year ago to now.
Yeah, what's the biggest thing that's
You went
changed?
from everybody waiving appraisals, contingencies, take my firstborn kid, I'll name my child
they're
after the
asking for
seller.
concessions.
Price drops, fix this, things that are even typically, right, if it's structural, if it's a hazardous fix, sellers would be like, okay, I get it, I have to fix it. But now even if it's cosmetic, sellers are like, okay, whatever needs to get done, let's sell it. And I think even the vetting process on the back end of making sure that the loan can close with the hiking of interest rates is a big thing, because if they're saying, hey, look, let's say it's another rate hike, can they qualify?
Yeah.
And in this industry in particular, every loan officer tells you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the case once you really unravel, what the DU findings look like and everything like that. And do they even have a real job? Do they fake a W-2 just to say I want the house? It's crazy.
We
what
don't
we have
run
to
into
deal
that
with.
too much.
No, but you do. It's part of it. But I think right now for buyers, you have a little bit of breathing room where you can kind of set the table and say, look, if I want the neighborhood, I want the schools, I want this area. There's options out there to either, you can use a concession to buy down the rate. You can use it to apply to your closing costs. You have a little bit of leverage where you had less than zero a year ago, and people that were FHA or needed a concession that literally got blown out of the water last year, now they can absolutely buy a home if the income, obviously assets, everything is still there. But it opens up the buyer pool to people that maybe were sitting on the sidelines and got fatigued, where they were like, I have no shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barrier of entry.
Yeah.
Everything's so expensive.
Right.
And a lot of people are having difficulty saving money.
Right.
Especially with inflation and, all these downturns in, the economic sphere. Home purchasing is slowing down. So people are slowing down, looking for houses. So sellers are kind of between a rock and a hard place, where 6 months ago, they'd sell their house in 2-3 weeks. Now it's taken 2-3 months, and they're starting to feel the pressure. That, coupled with the fact that houses were going for like $50,000 over asking.
Like minimum.
You're about to enter a period where sellers don't necessarily have many options, and people who didn't really have the savings but had strong income, now they're really in a good position because they can use a combination of, sellers concessions, lenders credits, to kind of game the system.
Right.
Because as you know, we can lend up as high as the house appraises for.
Right.
And houses have been appraising very high because all of the comps are high.
Right. They're there.
And now that the market is kind of dipping, it's a very unique time for people who are ambitious and willing to take that risk and know that the interest rates are going to come down a year from now. So let's get into that house for no money.
Right.
Let's use an FHA loan program. Let's negotiate. Let's put in offers on 10 houses. Let's negotiate with all of the sellers and really game this system.
Right. That plays a big part because you have sellers that are either very, I don't want to say desperate, but they're very eager to move, whether it's out of state or a different location. And they're like, I need to close.
Yeah.
And they don't realize they're still stuck in that mindset of last year. And the buyers are kind of seeing that it's not that market anymore. So it's kind of like bringing the sellers and the buyers to that medium to understand where the market is now. It's not the craziness where the open house lines are down 2 blocks and to the left.
I remember that.
And it feels like it was a long time ago, but it wasn't. And
6 months ago.
Yeah. I think it's more so making sure that, who we're helping understands like where we are in the market, where it was last year, how it's beneficial now, and kind of like how cyclical everything is. And it's not always doomsday for everybody. You could, like you said, game the system and for your benefit. People might say, great, I got locked in a 2.5% interest rate, but you paid $100,000 over asking.
Yeah.
So if you try to sell your house now, is it really that beneficial? Because you
Maybe
don't
not.
know, you don't know where life kind of takes you. So it just depends on everyone's situation. So if the situation fits, awesome. We're here to help. But if it's not, then, you don't want to impulse buy anywhere. You want to make sure it's right, and you want to work with the right people to make sure that, you're doing the right thing. You're excited. You're not, going to hate your purchase after a month after you're in. Yeah. You want to be excited. So
buyer's remorse.
Right. And you also have sellers that are like, I want a bidding war. And I'm like, that's great. If I had a time machine, I'll bring you back, but I don't. And, making sure that they understand where the market is, where they can probably list the price, what they can get for it. And also the buyers that are out there, the programs that are out there that are being offered. So to make sure that the home is sold as fast as possible. And that's the biggest thing that I see now is that a lot of sellers want ultimate speed, and the buyers are taking their time, as they should.
Well, they've been kicked around for the past year and a half.
Right. So they're not at the seller's, beck and call now.
Yeah. And they've got a bitter taste in their mouth too.
Right. Yeah. Basically, it comes down to just education and doing it the right way and explaining it in a way where everyone feels comfortable and not just, spitting numbers and facts at them and saying, this is what you need. It's education. It's education, all the time with us. So we're all teachers, no matter what it is, whether you're breaking down a closing disclosure to somebody or you're showing the house and they're wondering what that one particular old item is in the basement, or what, on an inspection report, and they're like, okay, the roof is 10 years old. Is that good, bad? And you're always educating somebody, and it's just making sure people are at ease and they're comfortable, because if they're not comfortable, it's not fun for anybody. And that's kind of what I try to make sure is that it's easygoing. It's as, there's always going to be stress in some part, but you want to minimize as much as you can and make sure that, you help them out so much in a way that, they're going to be your own best social media post, or they're going to be your ear to the street or your voice saying, you need to buy, you need to sell, use John, you need to refi, use Cardinal. That's basically kind of how I try to approach my business in that way, where the customer service is good, whether the deal almost fell apart and it came back together. You're always consistent trying to troubleshoot, and you're not blaming anybody. You're like, okay, this is what happened, let's try to troubleshoot to get it to the end of the table. And that's kind of what it is, no matter if it closes in 30 days or it takes 120. If we get to the end result, that's the main thing. So,
what advice do you have for people getting into real estate now?
Be ready to put yourself out there, because that's another transition in the market. I felt like the last year or two, everyone wanted to get their license because they saw, oh, house is selling a week, easy money, 2%, I could sell it to anybody. And I think it's going to really be a telling time of who stays in, who weathers the storm, and who is actually in it for the, consumer versus their own self. And I think if people really want to get into it, I think they should really, take, I say like 60 to 90 days and really shadow somebody.
Join a team.
Yeah, join a team, or even if you're on the fence and saying, okay, you're out doing the showing, you're doing a consultation with a seller, you're gonna present how you work with sellers, how do you sell to the seller that you're the best person for that job, and see if that's even really for you, because I think a lot of them, they watch too much HDTV. And they think that they're going to make a ton of money. The seller's going to sign. They go, yeah, no problem. 6%. Here you go. And that's not how life is.
Not at all.
And everyone thinks as he says, oh, you need to buy. Here's my friend at Cardinal, use them. Meanwhile, they're shopping around 4 times. And because mom told them that they used, USA Federal State, whatever fake bank was back in the 80s, like that's what they have to go through. And that's what's best for them. So you're dealing with a lot of factors that everyone thinks that they're an expert and they don't trust the process sometimes. And I think if you really want to dive into it, it's almost like that game of failure. So I think baseball kind of helped me in that sense, where you're failing more times than you succeed. So I'm used to that, being told no more often than the yeses, but striving to know that, this no is going to lead to the next yes, and just striving through it, where that muscle really isn't for the the new person coming in saying, great, everyone's going to say yes, I'm going to sell $1 million home tomorrow, and then I'll have another, great listing the next day. And it's just keeping that mindset and consistency, and knowing that, it may take a year before you even realize that you get your first deal done. Are you willing to do that? Are you, and build off of that. You have to start with one block, and it may not come the first day, it may not come the first 6 months, but if you're consistent enough, you can build it to whatever you want it to be. It's like, it really is true. Like, you could really build your own like Lego palace depending on how much time and effort you put into it. If you're want to get into real estate, but you're like, I'm bartending, I'm waitressing, I'm working another job, and you don't have any time, and you do one post that says buying or selling, contact me today, it's just not going to work. You really have to make it your full focus. And I think that's what, for me, is that transitioning people's mindset. We're saying, he's the real estate person, not a teacher or a baseball person. That was that shift that made me more busy, where to the point where if you're not having the full-time pipeline of business, it's never going to be like, oh, like I'm a teacher, I could just do it in the summer, because that's not going to happen. Because if you show them a house in the end of June, you're going to close probably before you go back to school.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen where you take off and then all of a sudden I have 3 months to work it. It's something that you have to continuously work every single day. And I think that's the big thing, is that a lot of people, they say, well, I don't have the pipeline you have. I'm not as busy as you are. But then you look at them and you're saying, okay, but what are you doing day in and day out to grow your own personal brand and business? And then they'll look at you and they'll say, well, I have this going on. I have this going on. Everyone has life going on, but I think that's the biggest thing, is if you really want, it's like anything, it's your own business. So if it's the business that you want to grow, go for it. If you don't see yourself as like an entrepreneur business type of person, it may not be for you. But it's not, I think a lot of people go into real estate thinking it's almost like a salaried office type of job. You go in, you're out by 5.
Yeah.
People come right into the door saying, hey, I need to buy a house. And then you go, okay, great. Let me grab my coat and let's walk out.
And they wait until 9 o'clock the next morning to hit you up again.
Right. And meanwhile, they don't understand the game of follow-up and following up 10, 15, 20 times. Even if they have a pre-approval and you show them 5 houses, they might ghost you.
Yeah.
It's almost like an adult dating game with everybody that you meet. And
absolutely.
And you're just trying to keep them, next to you. So make sure that, they don't go to the wayside, because everyone's in their ear. So it's just basically, are you that person to give that kind of like feeling to somebody, saying like, I'm going to trust what they have to say. I'm not going to leave this person. They're not steering me in the wrong direction. Even if they're frustrated, the big thing too is that sometimes if, let's say you guys send me a pre-approval and we're on the same page, we send it to the buyer, I start sending homes to the buyer in that price range. So, it's a cool feature. They're going to get the towns they want, minimum bedrooms, bathrooms, right? But then there might be that REO house that's boarded up and an email blast them. And they're like, are you kidding me? On an email blast? I'm like, look, just delete that one. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But they'll take it personal that you sent them like a zombie house. Meanwhile, it was in their price range, but you have no really like control over that sometimes because you're just trying to divvy up the task and making sure that everything is, efficient for you. Because if you talk to 50, 60 people and you're putting them on, a service where they're getting the homes that they need to see or their criteria they want, it's a lot to catch up and follow up on and being organized. And some people might get overwhelmed with it, but, I think the people that are really dedicated to the process are going to do well. And I think the next year might be more time where people exit the business versus come into the business.
Oh, absolutely. Especially right now, like
Yeah.
license renewal is coming up.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, I know even in our office, a couple of people are paying attention to the states that they've done deals in.
Okay.
And any of those states that they didn't necessarily do any deals in last year, they're dropping off because it's why pay for extra licenses if you're not doing business in that area.
Right.
Unless, like you said, you're not doing any business and, you should really be focused on drumming up business in those areas.
Right.
That's entirely different.
Right.
We're probably going to try and wrap up. I want to ask a couple of more questions. I know that you're a coach, you're a teacher. How does that translate to being a team lead, leading your own team as a real estate broker?
I think it goes hand in hand because whether you're coaching, you have to lead a team, you have to put together a strategy, you got to put together the right lineup, right? If I get an inbound lead and I know, what, this person would be great to team up with so-and-so. They have the same personality match. That's like kind of like a big thing. If someone comes in, they're like a dominant personality, sometimes it might not click with somebody else. And I'm very more so like, I want to see everybody succeed under my team. It's not like an inbound lead comes in, I'm like, okay, great, hooray for me, and I'm going to go take it. I really want everybody to stay busy. So for me, it's almost like everybody on your team you want to see do well, from a utility guy on the bench to your starting shortstop to and everyone's going to have faults. Someone might have a bad game, but it's okay. Someone might have a bad showing. Someone might go on a listing appointment and blow it, but it's okay. Well, you can learn to get better and not kind of, yell and scream at them like you see like a lot of the dad coaches in baseball, and they're screaming at a kid, and then the kid never wants to play baseball again. I'd use the same approach in real estate, whether it's good, better, and different. You're just staying consistent and making sure that they're getting better each time, and the growth chart keeps going up, and their confidence goes up. Confidence is a big thing, like in teaching, coaching, and everything. And some people's confidence might dip if they lose a deal. The deal dies. And that was their only deal that they had in the pipeline, and it's okay. Like it's going to happen. You bring it up. We're going to get fresh leads coming in. You're going to be the next on the totem pole, and we're going to inundate you with whatever and whatever support you need to make sure it goes on. Or another big thing that I find is that how I'm different is that most people that come into the industry, most people, family, friends, they need to sell their house, right? Mom needs to sell, grandma needs to sell. But what I saw was that, all right, it was almost like sharks with blood in the water. You're a new agent. Grandma needs to sell the house in your family. I'm going to go. We're going to co-list. I'm going to take line share and chop up your commission a million ways. Me, I make sure we walk through. It's comfortable. You can see kind of how I pitch, but the listing's totally in your name. We're not going to co-list. We're going to market it under you, so this way you can grow your side. And I feel like more people will tend to appreciate that because it's not a greed game for me. I want you to grow and be here long term. I'm not looking for like the one transactional check where I'm going to slice it down, and because you get it chopped down, it's almost like 3/4 of their pay gone, and it's a family transaction. I want them to feel like it's theirs, and I'm here to support, whether it's, oh my God, do I have to be there for an inspection or an appraisal, or what's a walkthrough? Like, this happened, like, no problem. CC me on every deal, every offer sheet. We'll go through it. I'll explain why. We'll explain it over the phone with the seller. So this way, I don't have to do this continuously over. And I feel like that's another big thing that I don't kind of agree with, is kind of like using other agents to beef up your own personal growth numbers. And if I sell 50 homes, I sold it myself. It's not Nancy Sue, Jim's listings that I co-listed and they did all the work. I'm taking the credit for. I'm very different in that way, where everybody is their own pillar and I want them to grow. And I think me expressing that is big, because hey, to each his own. I get it. You want to beef up your numbers. That's great. But I take it to baseball. I'm like, I think that's like PEDs. You're just juicing to juice up your numbers.
That's super.
I'm not doing that. And I think I say, hey, Ray, your aunt wants to sell. She lives in Center Reach. Let's go. We'll knock it out. I'll help you. We'll lock it in. We'll make sure she's comfortable, but it's completely, you're signing, it's your listing. It's not mine. You need help, call me. And that's kind of how
There's a lot of that in this industry where,
Tons.
You've got the top guy and they want a piece of everything underneath them, which I get.
Right.
You built the house.
Right. Right. It's,
But, I think it's important, and I'm glad that you recognize that. I know that we're in a place where our managers recognize that, the two things that I hate about this industry is the fact that there's so many people are cutthroat, trying to steal each other's business, and at the, going so far as to being willing to lie to clients.
Right.
And people are so pushy and salesy.
Yep.
When really all you need to do is just provide a service and be willing to actually care and help these people,
right.
Get them into the best position that they can.
Right. And I think that holds them longer term. If you help an agent and they see that versus what's going on in another section where maybe a friend was, that can help build your business, because that agent must have got chopped up 3 different ways, on co-list. And they're like, well, oh, you don't do that there? Really?
Yeah.
I'm coming over. And that's kind of like an avenue where I'm kind of trying to build that word out, saying like, look, it's just support. It's your money. I'm here to support you. It is what it is. Like, not, talking bad about anybody else. It's just, that's what we do different. So that's kind of like where I want to, build on that consistency of just being helpful and just, being a good leader in a sense where they feel supported and they feel like I'm not, taking away from them. They're gaining from me being there. So
there's value.
Yeah, there's value there. And then I'm like, oh crap, I have a listing. I know I'm getting an extra percentage chopped up because I need this guy there, because I only have no deals. Like if they look at my transaction, I only have 1 closing. Like how are they going to sign a listing agreement with me? So I'll say, oh, look, I'll go there. No problem. I've been in your shoes. And I think that came from me, where I knew my first listing was a best friend from ever. And it was his mom's listing. And I go in there, broker comes in, we co-list. I got my check when it closed, and I'm like, what is this? And it was chopped so many times. And I was like, I'll never co-list with somebody again. I'll make sure I'll figure out the listing side. That was when I was, in the earlier stages, and I knew how it felt to happen to me. So I was like, I'm not going to do it to anybody else. So that was kind of like a springboard to, lay that foundation. No matter how big or small the transaction is, it's theirs, and whatever their split is, that's the split, and that's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. You just provide the support, and give them like a home base.
Yeah.
And then help build them up.
Yeah, that's it. It doesn't have to be an admin fee of whatever just because the big boss wants to go to dinner. It's not about that. It's not about that. So, I think that's what transitioned from really teaching, coaching to real estate. It's all you're leading multiple people. And I think that's another thing where a lot of people don't realize how many hands are in the pot between an appraiser and a processor, an underwriter. You have the mortgage professional, you have the realtor. You have so many different people.
It's a big machine.
Inspector. Then you have the dads who think that they're inspector. You have so many different people in there. Everyone. Yep. That was gonna be my Halloween costume, but I didn't pull the trigger.
That'd be super funny.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's another part of the education world where they just think it's like us, and then we're in control of everything, and not knowing that there's like a spider web of so many people trying to help out that they might not even speak to, and kind of explaining that process, because I think sometimes people feel slighted in a way where, how come I didn't know this, or how come this wasn't caught, or how come I'm hearing about this now? And it's like, well, I think that's a big transition to really lay out kind of who delegates what in case of an emergency, or if this gets kicked back, or so this way there's no kind of dark shadow over somebody saying like, well, this is not good, like you're the big bad wolf, I'm not. And I'm like, I'm the listing agent.
Yeah, you're not the bad guy.
I'm not the bad guy. The buyer came in. This is the news from the buyer's lender. And that's it, just troubleshooting and really transitioning from that one-sided mindset where everybody's just, it's my name, it's my team. Like, you'll never see an agent put a closing or on a social media post and it's the John Enriquez team. And even my agents will ask, like, how come we don't put that? And I'm like, I don't want to be like everybody else. My branding isn't it shouldn't propel off of you. You're propelling your own branding, and we're all in it together. Like, if you need help, great, but I shouldn't gain a client from your sphere. I want you to help grow your own sphere and build your own business, and I'm just here to help you on.
Because at the end of the day, that builds your sphere. If you create, a strong agent underneath you that's producing and doing well, and you're still providing them the support and they don't want to leave you, that's great for you.
Right.
Yeah. I never understood that about this industry.
Right.
Because if you build someone up instead of holding them down, they're going to move mountains for you.
Right. And I think they appreciate that long term. And because that's the other thing is that no matter what, you get a closing, I feel like you're getting called from ADT for home security. Another broker's calling you.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you're getting like just inundated. I wish I could just get myself on the list so this way ADT never calls me anymore. But
right away.
Yeah, emails all that time. But I think that's like the biggest thing where if you take yourself out of it and you're saying, okay, how can I make myself in the center, but making sure they know that they can come to me with anything, and then they know I'm in it for the right reasons. I'm not in it for just a check off of them. That's like the biggest thing I always wanted to reiterate to anybody that wanted to come on over or is with me now. So that's just the easy spiel of it.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm really glad that you came by today. Hopefully we can have you back again.
Yeah, absolutely.
For one of the other series that we're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for listening. This has been The Road Home. We hope to see you next time.
See you next time, guys.
See you next time.